When we visited Efteling a few years ago, we immediately fell in love with this park.
It is a magical place filled with all types of attractions and of course, animatronics.
So today we'll be taking a look at some of the best animatronics that we can find at Efteling.
Fastpass facts.
Droomvlucht. It is tough to choose which of Efteling's attractions is the most beautiful and enchanting, but if we had to choose, Droomvlucht is definitely one of our top 3. This attraction takes us aboard a flying gondola into 5 scenes based on fairy tales. The idea that Toon van de Ven, the creative director for this and many other Efteling rides, had for this ride was that it would not tell an explicit story. Instead, the ride was created to be like a dream. And dreams don't often have specific stories and are just hard to retell after waking up. When you enter the queue, you notice that you are about to enter a magical world, and the attraction does not disappoint a bit. First, it takes us through the castle realm, with its fairy tale castles, waterfalls, and forests. We then enter Wonderwood, a forest full of fairies, elves, and fauns. Next, we enter the most beautiful scene of all, in our opinion, the Fairy Garden, where we see a forest with dozens of flowers in a pond. In this forest, we find many fairies. Some are flying, some are sitting down. We also find King Oberon, king of the elves. Then we go through the Celestial Fortress and into Zompenswood. This part of the attraction is very surprising and fun. We see a troll hanging from a tree branch, and suddenly our gondolas begin floating down in a spiral shape at a speed of 18 kilometers per hour, while surrounding a muddy swamp where some large trolls are bathing in the rain. This brings us to the Dream Swamp, where we see 2 more figures, a troll lifting 3 singing fairies above his head, and a faun playing the harp. And with this beautiful dream ends. All in all, we find about 110 figures, most of which are animatronics. It was decided that for this attraction, they would use simple movement animatronic techniques instead of the high-tech animatronics that were available at the time when the attraction opened in 1993. So, each animatronic contains the necessary servo motors, cylinders, and other control elements to be able to move individually. But it was still a challenge to achieve because being able to squeeze the necessary technology into the little elf bodies was pretty hard. Thankfully, it was achieved, and we ended up with some of the cute and magical animatronics in Efteling. Baron 1898. The Baron 1898 is a dive coaster that opened at Efteling in 2015. This coaster was created by Bolliger and Mabillard, who have made several of the world's most popular coasters. It has a drop of over 90 kilometers per hour from 37.5 meters down a tunnel, an Immelmann, a zero-G roll, and a helix. And just like with several of the best coasters, the Baron 1898 has a great backstory. It is themed as a late 19th century gold mine with 8 red brick buildings outside for the queue. The story goes like this. A greedy mining baron, Gustav Hogemode, has found a vein of gold and wants to extract as much gold as possible from the ground there. However, the fertile soil is protected by the Wailing Woman. Gustav calls on his miners to help him and promises them mountains of gold. During the ride, it becomes clear that the Wailing Women are trying with all their might to sabotage the gold mining. All of this is explained in the several buildings of the queue. In the first part of the pre-show, we see 2 screens hanging on the wall above the door, a slideshow behind where Gustav explains to us that we have been hired as miners, when suddenly, the Wailing Women appear, break the equipment, and warn us not to go any further. Then, a door opens, and we enter the wages room, where Gustav, in animatronic form, addresses us from a balcony and gives us instructions on what to do next. This is a fantastic animatronic created by none other than Garner Holt Productions. It should be noted that Efteling has developed most animatronics entirely in-house, with a few special technological partnerships. But beginning in 2015, when the Baron 1898 opened, they began regularly working with Garner Holt for this and other projects we will cover in this video. Fairytale Forest. We could say that the Fairytale Forest turned Efteling from a nature park into the fantastic theme park it is today. This attraction goes all the way back to 1952, when famous illustrator Anton Pieck was asked to design the fairy tales for the forest. He initially designed 10 fairy tales for the forest, which were an immediate success. After the success of these fairy tales, Efteling began adding more and more throughout the years, and nowadays, you can find 30 fairy tales in the forest. There are 2 types of fairy tales in the forest, the ones that do tell a story, and the fairy tale characters who appear alone. We'll talk about these a little later, but right now, we'll focus on the ones that tell a story. These fairy tales are mainly well-known stories and some lesser-known ones, and most of them have interactive elements such as animatronics. Some of these animatronics are a little more basic, like the Witch and the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale, but there are so many more that are very impressive and advanced animatronics. We've talked about the Pinocchio animatronics, which are probably the most advanced. In Geppetto's house, we find dozens of animals moving. We also see some barrels next to the house where the fox and the cat are hiding. And then, in the harbor, we find this giant fish that has eaten Pinocchio and Geppetto. There's also the Frau Hole animatronic, who makes it snow by shaking her pillow out the window, and the Rumpelstiltskin animatronics. There are some fairy tales that are housed in their buildings, like Cinderella, where the prince animatronic puts the slipper on Cinderella's foot, or the beautiful Indian water lilies. We could go on and on talking about all the animatronics in the Fairytale Forest. But for now, we'll stop. But let us know in the comments if you want to see a video about this fantastic forest and its fairy tales. If you're enjoying our content, consider subscribing to our channel. Also, like and share the video. Draconicon. As we've said in the beginning, Efteling is full of different attractions and animatronics, and they have a large variety of them, ranging from complex to simple, and also from small to huge. That is the case of Draconicon. Draconicon is the great mechanical dragon of Olaf Grafhart in the Ravelin show. This show tells the story of 5 children who are magically transformed into brave knights. They free the medieval city of Ravelin after confronting the cruel oppressor, Count Olaf. The show has 50 performers, stunt people, horse riders, and falconeers. And if this is not enough, it also features the fantastic mechanical dragon, Draconicon. Draconicon is a 5-headed monster with 2 wings and 4 claws. Each of the heads spit fire. The visible part of its mechanism consists mainly of large gears. In Ravelin's story, he was built by Falco Peregrinus, who pretends to be Count Olaf Grafhart as the ultimate weapon to defend his power. This amazing dragon was designed and created by Heavy Decor, a company that specializes in decoration and set construction. The dragon is very impressive and equally scary. Unfortunately, some years ago, the dragon had some problems and it broke, so the show had to be temporarily closed. But thankfully, the park got to work rapidly, and Draconicon was repaired, and the show and dragon came back soon after. This is such an awesome and scary animatronic at the same time, and the fact that it has 3 flame-throwing heads makes it more terrifying. Symbolica. Symbolica is another of the amazing dark rides that left us in awe. The scenery, music, and animatronics are simply amazing. From the palace facade to the queue, you feel like you're in another world. Moreover, the animatronics and special effects in this attraction are on another level. The pre-show alone is extraordinary. If you don't believe us, just watch this effect. In this pre-show, it's where we find our first animatronics, Palaslaki OJ Punctuil, and the Paradise, who is also Efteling's mascot. These animatronics were also created by Garner Holt, so the quality is outstanding. This ride is filled with incredible scenes, and we could make a whole video about it, but today we will just focus on the animatronics. One of the most amazing and complex and detailed animatronics is Almar the Wizard, who we can find in the first scene at the observatory. This animatronic moves smoothly and has a multitude of articulations, including articulations in the hands. Here we see Paradise again as an animatronic. As we pass this scene, we can see some butterfly animatronics before reaching the botanical garden scene, which, in our opinion, is the absolute best scene. It features an incredible and gigantic whale animatronic that, along with projections and practical effects, creates the illusion of the animatronic destroying and flooding the greenhouse. After this scene, we see another Paradise animatronic. This trackless dark ride offers 3 different tours: the Music Tour, the Heroes Tour, and the Treasures Tour. They all follow more or less the same route with some different rooms, but they all end up in the ballroom, where we can find the animatronics of King Pardulphus's court. Symbolica is one of the best dark rides in the world, and it's not only because of its animatronics, but also thanks to its lore, music, and the immersion that Efteling has provided. Villa Volta. Villa Volta is a unique experience. At first glance, it appears to be a beautiful but ordinary villa. Only when we enter do we realize that we've stepped into a haunted house. Villa Volta tells the story of Hugo van de Loonsdunion, the leader of the Buck Riders, a fearless gang dedicated to robbing and terrorizing all the provinces of North Brabant. It is said that they made a pact with the devil and flew through the sky on the backs of goats. Villa Volta is the home of Hugo, also known as Hugo the Goat Rider. It is in the second room of this house that we finally encounter Hugo in the form of a complex animatronic, alongside the Troll King. This animatronic is one of the most advanced in the park. It is incredible to see this animatronic in the queue of the attraction because not only is it a great animatronic, but it also gives us the context of the ride and tells us that we're in his house, and that a mysterious woman cursed it after the gang robbed the Abbey of Postal. The woman can be seen on top of the house, swinging her arms in the wind and telling Hugo that he will not find peace, either in his house or any other place in the world, until a noble person with a clear conscience like that of a newborn child enters the house. This animatronic was one of the first that was not entirely made in-house, but it was a result of a collaboration with TNO, and at the time, it was the most complicated animatronic in the park. Hugo has undergone 3 major cosmetic modifications. The first one was in 2007 when Hugo's mask was replaced with a lower quality one, which caused a massive uproar among fans. After some time, it was modified again in 2009 with a slightly improved version, but still far from the original. Finally, in 2011, a new realistic mask was created, and this time it was well received as the best version to date. As for the ride itself, Villa Volta is truly special. It is a groundbreaking madhouse attraction that uses rotating interiors and moving benches to create the illusion of flipping over. Developed by Efteling and Vekoma, it was the world's first of its kind. Similar attractions can now be found in European parks. So, if you ever visit Efteling, don't hesitate to visit Hugo. Perhaps you can help him with his curse. Edna. Edna has been featured multiple times here on Fastpass Facts, and we're about to cover it again because it is fantastic. This animatronic is the main attraction of the George and the Dragon coaster. Because, let's face it, what would a George and the Dragon coaster be without its iconic dragon? This roller coaster features 2 tracks of 810 meters each, where 2 trains, water and fire, compete against each other simultaneously. The track was designed in consultation with Efteling by Great Coasters International Inc., and while the coaster is great, the most impressive part of the attraction is Edna. Edna is a fire-breathing dragon designed by P&P Projects. This animatronic dragon is located along the pathway that runs in front of the attraction, nestled in a partially enclosed swamp area between 2 sections of the road. Standing at an impressive height of 39 feet, Edna could move her head and neck and breathe fire. The creation of this animatronic presented a significant challenge due to the short time frame and the complexity of hard body shells that were needed to perform intricate movements. Sadly, this animatronic experienced several malfunctions and eventually lost all its movements. In 2019, Efteling announced that Edna would never regain her functionality. However, fans didn't hold back and tirelessly called on Efteling to repair Edna. In 2022, the roller coaster underwent a major renovation, with the track being replaced to become a steel coaster. Along this upgrade, Efteling repaired and gave Edna a fresh texture. However, Edna couldn't return to her previous movements, and it has been confirmed that she will never breathe fire again. Some believe that this is a step towards Edna eventually regaining her original movements, while others assert that Edna will remain with these limited movements. Regardless, it is great that this glorious animatronic has finally received maintenance and repairs. Fata Morgana. Fata Morgana's iconic song lives rent-free in our heads. This ride is an absolute marvel and was the first one we experienced at Efteling. The very ride that made us fall in love with the park. Many try to compare it to Pirates of the Caribbean because Ton Van de Ven drew inspiration from pirates to create it, but that doesn't mean it's a mere copy. This ride is unique and takes us through 14 different scenes filled with effects like open flames, lasers, wind, captivating scents, fog, and enchanting music. With 137 animatronics, it is truly a gem for us. What's fascinating about these animatronics is that they utilize various types of systems throughout the ride. Some of them operate with older technology that has been modernized over the years. These systems rely on profile discs or cam discs that control every movement of the animatronics. In addition to the cam discs, larger figures are directly operated by servo motors and compressed air cylinders. Instead of cam discs, spindle motors located behind the dolls were used for figures that required significant, heavier movements. For figures that require more convincing and faster movements that couldn't be achieved with cam discs, mechanical rollers, and pull cables, compressed air was utilized. This allowed for blinking eyes, and the movement of their mouths was synchronized with spoken text. A control board was specifically designed for this purpose. overseeing the motions of 20 dolls. What makes this ride truly unique is that each scene features different types of doors that transport guests into distinct settings. The theming is superb, and the music and scents create an immersive experience, making guests feel like they're truly living their own Arabian Night adventure. It's something you need to experience at least once in your life. Fairytale Characters. Remember when we mentioned the two types of fairy tales in the Fairytale Forest? We talked about the first kind. Now we'll cover the other type, the ones that were only very well-known mythological creatures without telling an actual story. The first one of these to appear in the Fairytale Forest was the dragon. The dragon opened in 1979, and it was a mess when it first opened because it did not move as naturally as it had been envisioned. And the dragon could not move until a month and a half after the opening of the Efteling season. When the hydraulically powered dragon finally grunted and hissed as a treasure keeper, it was, at 7 meters long with a wingspan of 4 meters, the largest moving dragon ever constructed. The dragon weighs 984 kilos, and the construction of the beast took more than 3,000 labor hours. It is, without a doubt, one of the more frightening images in the Fairytale Forest. While the dragon doesn't have a particular story attached to it, it is pretty interactive. Guests can pull the crown from the half-open treasure chest in front of it to make the dragon move. Next, we skip to 1988, when the Troll King was added to the forest. This animatronic was the first animatronic to be created in collaboration with TNO, and not made entirely in-house by Efteling. The Troll King is a crooked old troll who acts as a soothsayer. The Troll King is seated on a throne on a large hollow tree stump. Guests can choose their constellation on a boulder with a copper pointer. After a short while, a clear bell sounds. The velvet curtain in front of the troll slides open, and the scene shows the Troll King in deep rest. When the troll wakes up and starts talking, and guests hear the horoscope in barely intelligible gibberish, until the Troll King finally falls asleep again and disappears behind his curtain. The animatronic has a large number of movements. There are 24 movements in the face alone, making it a pretty impressive animatronic. And lastly, we see the Fairytale Tree, which appeared in the forest in 2010. The tree is a large oak-like tree with a moving face in the trunk, and it can draw from a library of 80 stories about the adventures of the Fairytale Tree characters, and tells them in a loud voice to anyone listening. The tree is also interactive because it sometimes asks guests' names and is able to repeat them. It can also react to the weather through a number of sensors and process this in its program. All of these figures are fascinating and just a small part of what makes Efteling such an amazing place. If we missed any animatronics, please let us know in the comments.